Hello everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Today I will be talking about the problem with making promises. Jesus says this about making promises. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, "You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn." An oath would be a promise with something valuable attached to that promise. For example, let's say I promise that I will work for you for 5 years, or else you can take my house. And so making a promise during the Old Testament was not just done with words. It would be conditioned with something valuable to the person making an oath so that the other person will take that person's word seriously. The problem was that people started to abuse this law by swearing in God's name. Instead of saying that the other person can take their cow, they will say, "I swear by God's name that I will do what I promised to do." But do you see a problem with this? There's nothing to take away from a person who swears by God's name. This is why God specifically told his people to not do this. "You shall not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord." And then again in Deuteronomy chapter 5 verse 11, "You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. For the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain." When you take the Lord's name in vain, this does not mean to curse, but to use God to make an oath you don't intend on keeping. It is the equivalent of saying, "As God is my witness." Jesus forbids not only swearing by God's name, but anything else that is closely associated with God. "But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God." Obviously, we understand the close association with heaven and God. Heaven is where God is. It would be like swearing by Andrew's presence instead of Andrew. That's the same thing, right? Some people then will swear by the throne of God, which is where God sits. So Jesus adds this, "Or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king." So the Jewish leaders were even more creative and swear by the footstool instead of the throne. This is a lake rest for God. And Jerusalem is the earthly city where God will reign one day. You notice that each euphemism is taking a step away from God, but it is still associated with God. It is like a person saying, "I won't swear by Andrew, I'll only swear by his children, or his house, or his car, or a shoe." Regardless of how many steps you try to take away from God, you are still swearing by things that are connected to God. This is where Jesus makes a point of the problem of swearing by euphemisms for God. "And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black." So how is your head connected with God? Back in Jesus' time, people had ways of coloring their hair like we do. So technically, a person could make their hair black or white with some dye. But Jesus is not talking about dyeing your hair. He is talking about when a person becomes old with white hair. The older a person, the more honor people will give to that person. Here is Jesus' point. Nobody can give or take honor for themselves. Only God can give or take away honor for you. Only God will allow you to live a longer time to get more white hairs and receive more honor. Even if you could dye your hair, people would honor you based on your age, and you had no power over your age. Therefore, since you don't have the power to gain or lose honor, you also don't have the power to make or keep a vow in God's name. You see, if you make a promise and break it, you dishonor your reputation. People won't believe your word after a while. But if you swear by another person's name and you break that promise, then you dishonor that person's name. So when you swear by God's name and you don't keep your word, you dishonor God. And only God has the power to give or take away honor, just as God is the only one with power to age a person. This leads to the solution to making false promises. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. You know what a person should do instead of making a promise in God's name? Own up to your word. Don't bring God into it. That way, if you fail to live up to your word, it's on you and not God. You see, by not adding anything else to our word, Jesus implies that our word should be sufficient. Do you know why people want us to swear? It is when they can't trust us. Can people trust your word? Or do they need you to swear by something or sign a contract because you are known to not keep your word? Jesus said that his kingdom citizens should not swear because they shouldn't need to. They should have a reputation for honesty such that their word is enough to people. When they made a promise to their families don't need them to sign a contract. When their bosses assign them a project to finish by next week, they know you will do it and don't need to keep checking in on you. The reason why Jesus says it's evil to add anything to your word is that it implies that people don't trust your word enough to just take it at face value. Now, some Christians believe that Jesus is teaching that since we should never take oaths, then we should never give a testimony in court since it requires you to swear. Or that we should never have a contract with people since our words should be enough. But the context of this passage is to highlight the point of God's law. The point of God's law is to make sure his people were honest. But this does not mean that we live in an honest world. Even if you are completely honest and people can trust your word, it does not mean you can trust everybody else's word, right? Jesus is not saying that we should be naive and blindly believe every scam email we receive or not have a receipt for anything we buy at a store. Instead, the issue of swearing is like divorce. God knows that we live in a world broken with sin. He knows that people are dishonest in their very nature. He knows that even if his kingdom citizens follow his ethics, the rest of the world will not necessarily follow. So if divorce was due to hard-heartedness, then swearing is due to human untruthfulness. Yes, in an ideal world, there will never be divorce, but God allows it in certain cases because he knows that sin is still present in our world. In an ideal world, we will not need contracts or need to go to court since everybody is truthful. But because sin is still present in our world, we need contracts, we need oaths, we need people to swear by something valuable to them to get to the truth in the court of law or in the commercial world. So the conclusion is not that Jesus wants us to never enter a contract, but Jesus wants us to live a type of life where people wouldn't even need a contract with us. We might need contracts because other people are not trustworthy, but we shouldn't need contracts because we are untrustworthy. And the ultimate picture of this type of righteousness is Jesus himself. Jesus kept his word all the time. When he committed himself to go to the cross, he did it even though he didn't want to. When he told his disciples he would get them to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, he did it even though there was a great storm. When Jesus says that he will return to establish his kingdom of righteousness, he will do it because he has proven himself to be trustworthy. Let us show the world that they can trust in Jesus because his kingdom citizens reflect his honesty. Thank you to today's sponsor, On Reverence. They offer a free digital worship music app called Maskill. If you want to find out more, I'll leave some links below in the description box. If you missed the last video about the problem of divorce, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. And until next time, see you.